Today on an all-new Dr. Phil.
Why should people believe you didn't shoot this deputy sheriff?
It's not about believing me, it's about believing the evidence.
There's no forensic evidence tying Rob Will to the crime. There's no DNA or gunshot residue evidence.
He did have gunshot residue on his left hand.
That's correct.
So why would it fall off his right hand but not his left hand?
It's one of the mysteries of the case.
The alternative explanation is he didn't pull the trigger. Today's going to be a changing day in your life. You've never had anybody working harder to bring you to the threshold of change than right now. Well, you know, it seems these days that we just can't get enough of true crime, and there's an awful lot of it to get. Today, we're going to delve into a murder that happened 20 years ago. Both sides are here. The prosecutor who says the right man is behind bars, and those who believe that ballistic evidence and the lack of DNA don't lie. Beyond a reasonable doubt means the prosecutor's evidence is such that no other logical explanation can be derived from the facts except that the defendant committed the crime. By the end of this episode, you're going to have a decision. You're going to have an opinion, I suspect. 18 years ago, 22-year-old Rob Will was convicted of murder and sentenced to death for shooting and killing 38-year-old Harris County Sheriff's Deputy Barrett Hill. But Rob says he didn't pull the trigger, and the state of Texas has the wrong guy sitting on death row. I wanted to know. I went to Livingston, Texas to visit Rob at the Polunsky unit, where Warden Michael Butcher and his staff were very accommodating and very professional. When I sat down with Rob, he admitted to me that he was young and dumb on the morning of December 4th, 2000. He and Alan Michael Rosario were stealing car parts when two sheriff's deputies arrived at the scene. Take a look. Rob, how are you?
Hey, hello.
I've been very anxious to talk to you because I've been really doing a very deep study on your case and everything that's happened. Tell me about the night that wound up getting you charged with a crime.
Well, I was out being an idiot, and there's no excuse for it, and I was engaging in criminal activity, and that's a stupid, stupid, stupid thing. A friend of mine knew somebody had some fancy rims on his car and wanted me to help him take them.
Right.
The car was already stolen.
Okay. And who had stolen the car?
My co-defendant.
Okay. So your co-defendant, Michael Rosario, had already gotten the car.
Yes.
And so the police rolled up, and what did you guys do?
We ran in the same direction.
Okay, so you just took off together. Deputy Hill catches you,
Yes.
puts you in handcuffs. What happened then?
That's when my co-defendant started firing.
You're handcuffed, right?
Yes.
And did you hear the shot or did you see the shot?
I do remember the flash. Like I'm faced forward in a flash, and it happened all very rapidly.
All right. And so after that occurs, how did you get out of the handcuffs?
He uncuffed me.
And how did he do it?
Well, I put a handcuff key.
Did he have it or did he take it off the officer?
I don't know, but he had all kinds of bulletproof vests.
He uncuffed you?
Yeah.
Okay. Now you had a gunshot wound on your knuckle, right?
Yes.
How'd that happen?
I didn't realize I was shot until I was driving away.
So you don't even remember it happening at the time?
I didn't realize it.
Yeah. Why should people believe you didn't shoot this deputy sheriff?
It's not about believing me, it's about believing the evidence.
Well, for 2 decades, this capital murder case has bounced back and forth between state and federal appeals. Right now, Rob is awaiting another court decision on whether he deserves a new trial. The Assistant District Attorney for Harris County, Josh Reeves, says he stands by the conviction. Now, Josh met us at the field where the shooting took place to show us how the state thinks the murder played out.
The evidence showed Rob Will shot Barry Hill, and he also shot himself. There are really two critical issues to the case. One is the murder weapon. And when they found the murder weapon on Rob Will, it was located in his belt buckle. So, yes, in a scuffle with somebody, could Rob Will have pulled it out and shot? Sure. The other issue was the issue of the handcuffs. When Deputy Hill was found, handcuffs were near his body, on the floor, closed. Deputy Hill had said, I got one in custody. Here are the critical things to realize about that. One is you were dealing with a trainee officer. Maybe he had the cuffs on him, maybe he didn't. The other important thing that says, Rob Will was consistently inconsistent as to how those cuffs got off of him. In one version, Rosario had his own handcuff key. In another version, Rosario took the key from Barry Hill and unlocked it. In another version, they were sawed off. The story he also told was that Rosario gave him the firearm. If you have just seen somebody kill a police officer, you're not going to take the firearm. You're not then going to use that firearm to commit a carjacking. Rob Will goes into that apartment complex, and there's a woman there, and he tells her, I just shot a police officer, and carjacks her. There's only one logical conclusion the state believes in this case, and that Rob Will committed capital murder.
Rob Will's appellate attorney, Sammy Khalil, believes Rob's claim that he could not have shot Deputy Hill because his hands were cuffed behind his back.
Officer Kelly testified at trial that he did not know which way Rosario ran after he lost sight of him. The doghound tracked Rosario's scent from the apartment units up the overgrown driveway to the scene where Deputy Hill was tragically killed. Rob Will was in handcuffs. Rosario ran from the end of the driveway, alongside the brush or through the brush, to the scene of the murder. 7 long-range shots were fired by Rosario. The only blood of Rob Will's found on the officer was from the wound inflicted upon him by Rosario. That's the only gunshot residue found on Rob Will's hands. After the murder, we have now found jail records that was suppressed by the state of Texas that Rosario attempted to have the only witness to his crime killed, and that's Rob Will.
Well, thank both of you for being here. I really appreciate it. I think that this is of great interest, and I'm from Texas, and I am a very outspoken, proclaimed supporter and advocate of law enforcement. So I want justice to be served here. My question is the right person on death row? And you say the answer to that question?
Unquestionably, yes.
Is yes.
Absolutely.
And you see no room for doubt here whatsoever?
None. And in fact, I think the state's case, Dr. Phil, has gotten stronger since the trial. And the reason for that is this. The claim that you have in these types of cases is ineffective assistance of counsel. Basically, my attorney screwed up. When that claim is raised, the state of Texas is able to go back and talk to the attorney who represented Rob Will. And what have they told us? They told us that Rob Will told them multiple different accounts. He could not keep his story straight. Another thing, his attorney goes back one day to talk to Rob Will in the holdover cell to get him to sign something, and he finds out something incredible. Rob Will is double jointed. Rob Will has the ability, like a circus performer, to bring his hands from back to front. When he was arrested, he had a gun in his waistband. Could he have pulled that out and shot Officer Hill in that position? Absolutely. And that
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Was there any gunshot residue on his hand?
So that's a great question. There was not. Now, why is that? Think about what happens here. He shoots. He then runs at full speed, okay? So this gunshot residue in his hands are moving. He goes across the bayou, and he's got his hands on a gun. He carjacks a woman by the name of Cassandra Simmons. To get her out of the car, he's touching the car door. He's got his hands on the wheel. He's driving north. Cassandra Simmons also had a bottle of bleach in the back of her car. He bleaches his clothes. And then when he is caught again in Wharton, he is running. So that's about 2 or 3 hours. That gunshot residue could have flown off anywhere.
Okay, well, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because he did have gunshot residue on his left hand where he was shot.
I believe that's correct.
So why would it fall off his right hand but not his left hand?
One of the mysteries of the case.
The alternative explanation is it was never on his right hand, which means he didn't pull the trigger.
He's calling it speculation. What is that speculation based on? We don't know. You guys won't let us. You guys
Well, that's
won't.
not fair, Senator.
No,
Not letting you. That's not
Well,
fair.
No, you've opposed a hearing, tooth and nail, to get Deputy Strickland on the stand. Why? What are you afraid
Because
of?
David Cruz.
Someone's life's at stake.
And later,
That's why I want to talk to you, because you're going to understand me even better than my attorneys, and I don't care what my attorneys think, quite frankly, Dr. Phil, and I really want to talk with you about some specific things.
Tomorrow,
He claims he married online
She's a beautiful woman. This is not a scam.
and that his new wife
the word wife usually describes somebody that I've at least met.
has a big inheritance.
10.6 million.
Who married you?
I don't know.
You just signed your name on a piece of paper.
I sent my driver's license, Social Security. They had me investigated.
I'll bet they did.
that's tomorrow. Then on Thursday,
I have OCD and hoarding disorder.
You told my staff I didn't know anything about OCD.
She's very manipulative.
You're not going to manipulate me.
that's Thursday.
I've given him primacy. Let me let you respond.
Dr. Phil, 8 years ago, a federal judge in Texas appointed me to take over Rob Will's case. Over the last 8 years, what have we uncovered? We've uncovered that there's no forensic evidence tying Rob Will to the crime. There's no DNA or gunshot residue evidence tying him to the crime. We've uncovered a police report that shows that a police bloodhound tracked Michael Rosario through the apartment complex, up the concrete driveway, and directly to the location of the shooting. We've uncovered multiple lies that Michael Rosario presented to the police upon being interrogated. And we've uncovered a new witness who says that Michael Rosario confessed to him that he was the shooter that morning. Mm-hmm. And last but not least, and this is the smoking gun, we've uncovered a jail record, an official police record, that shows that Michael Rosario attempted to kill Rob Will in the weeks and months after the murder. He put out a hit at the Harris County Jail against Rob Will. There is no innocent explanation. He did that because he wanted to kill the only eyewitness to his crime.
Let's look at the affidavit from Strickland. The affidavit says, Rosario initiated contact with me, possibly in a three-way telephone call to my office, with a request to talk to another Harris County jail inmate, David Cruz. The notation soliciting to make hit on co-defendant Rob Will represents my speculation as to Rosario's reason for wanting to talk to Cruz and does not constitute actionable intelligence. How does that not constitute actionable intelligence?
Well, that's my question, Dr. Phil. Deputy Strickland, 3 months before the trial, on September 11th of 2001, originally testified under oath before the trial judge that he had no information pertaining to Rob Will's case. So we've got several questions for the district attorney's office. Why is this document in Rob Will's case file? Why is there a document that shows that David Cruz was approached by Rosario to take Rob Will out? And why is it that the state of Texas to this day is fighting our request to put Deputy Strickland under oath and cross-examine about his supposed speculation as to what this notation means that he authored? I mean, is it that Deputy Strickland woke up one day and said, gee, I think Michael Rosario is trying to kill Rob Will. He's calling it speculation. What is that speculation based on? We don't know. You guys won't let us. You guys
Well, that's
won't.
not fair, Sam, about me not letting you. That's not fair.
No, you've opposed a hearing, tooth and nail, to get Deputy Strickland on the stand. Why? What are you afraid of?
Because David Cruz...
Someone's life's at stake
Well,
here.
he is, and we got the right guy, Sammy. And the issue is with David Cruz, and you know this, is we got a tape recording of David Cruz after you got him to get an affidavit saying Rosario wanted to put a hit on Rob Will, and Rosario confessed to me. We have a tape of David Cruz telling his mother he made the affidavit up.
We heard from the attorneys about this hit document. What does Rob have to say about it? Now, this friend, Michael Rosario, that you were with the morning that all this happened, how did you get to know him?
Well, he's somebody I bought marijuana from. Actually, that's how I met him.
And then ultimately, both of you were arrested, right?
Yeah.
It's my understanding that something that has come to light but not disclosed at the time was he actually put a hit out on you.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
That's really, really interesting. There's some prosecutors who hid this information, and it only came to light when a new DA's administration came into play. It was never disclosed to any previous counsel.
So they had a document that he had contracted to have someone kill you, and your theory is he had to have you killed. Why?
Obviously, I'm the only witness to the murder that he committed.
So there are two people that know what happened that morning, you and him, and he's going to try to have you killed.
Yeah.
And then there's only one person that knows what happened.
Yeah.
So a dog picked up Rosario's scent here, came into the field, made a left, went down, made another left, and came right back to where the scene was.
Yes, sir.
And that is how you believe Rosario came up behind Deputy Hill and shot him 7 times from long range.
Correct.
And the dog confirms in your mind that that's what happened.
That's correct. And the jury never heard anything about this dog track that was in the police files.
Okay, we'll talk more about that. We have to take a break. You have the gun when you were ultimately caught?
Yeah.
And that's why they tested you for gunshot residue.
Yeah.
So Leonard, if a person has gunshot residue, does that prove they fired the gun?
We are back with a brand new season of my podcast, Fill in the Blanks.
With newlyweds and new parents, Jordan McGraw and Morgan Stewart McGraw.
People at first are like, he's so quiet, she's so loud, how does that really work out?
I'm the funnier of the two of us.
That's inaccurate.
Were you guys nervous when the baby was born?
Definitely not how I ever envisioned giving birth.
Jordan, what do people not know about Morgan?
Most people don't realize how gentle she can be.
I'm gonna cry, are you crazy?
A brand new season of Fill in the Blanks.
You have a big announcement, right?
Available on Apple Podcast and Stitcher.
Why do you think you're sitting on death row?
Back when I originally went to trial, there were certain elements that controlled the court system and were in the DA's office. There's other examples of the lead prosecutor in my case sending other innocent people to prison. And that's why I want to talk to you, because you're going to understand me even better than my attorneys. And I don't care what my attorneys think, quite frankly, Dr. Phil. And I really want to talk with you about some specific things, like the DNA evidence.
Well, for 20 years, Rob Will has been sitting on death row for the shooting death of Harris County Sheriff's Deputy Barrett Hill in a Houston bayou. Now, Rob's attorney, Sam Khalil, says there was no physical evidence linking Rob Will to the murder, but the assistant DA says Rob did get caught with the gun in his hand. Now, I sat down with Rob to listen to his explanation. Your fingerprints were not found at the murder scene, and they didn't test Rosario's fingerprints for exclusion or otherwise.
Interestingly, in one of his statements, he admitted having the gun earlier in the night.
Well, did he ultimately give you the gun?
Yes, very stupid.
Did you have it when you were ultimately caught?
Yeah.
And that's why they tested you for gunshot residue.
Yeah.
So you had the gun. Why did he give it to you? Why did you take it?
Well, he bent down to get the gun from the officer, and he gave it to me. I don't know if he was thinking, oh my God, I just shot somebody, or if he's just like, here, man, take this, I got to get this other gun, you know? And I don't know if this was a subconscious thing with me, but I remember thinking like, it's his gun, okay? I have the gun. I could turn it in and everybody will know. You know what I mean? It's stupid. It sounds stupid now, but like when I was first arrested, I told the officer, hey man, I got the gun, you know? Look, I have his gun. I mean, it's stupid. I obviously shouldn't have done that, but hey, I was an idiot.
Well, Rob Will says it's about believing the evidence. Well, someone who does believe Rob is innocent is Jason Flom. Now, Jason is the CEO of Lava Records, but for the past 3 decades, he has been a prison reform activist. So, Jason, thank you for joining us and being here to talk about this. You've been following Rob Will's case for a good while.
Yeah, over a year now, and the facts in the case just don't add up to any. I don't think any reasonable person can say that he's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. There's too many things that don't make any sense.
Such as?
There it really is no physical evidence. It's what the judge said, the federal judge said, right? That there is only circumstantial evidence in this case, and that there are, as he said, grave errors in every phase of the trial proceedings. This is a federal judge, one of the most respected judges, I think, on the bench, I think we can all agree, in the entire country, certainly in the state of Texas.
About Judge Ellison?
Yes. And, you
well,
know,
Judge Ellison made a statement that I think we should take a look at. He said, the case originated as a straightforward habeas corpus petition and has become a procedural imbroglio. Now, that should not, however, obscure the troubling possibility of petitioner Robert Gene Will's actual innocence. Now, conduct of Will's original state habeas corpus counsel appears to have been severely compromised by serious health condition. The court is particularly sensitive to the absence of any direct evidence of Will's guilt and the number of witnesses who aver that another man confessed to the underlying murder. What do you think about that?
Well, everything that could have gone wrong in Rob's case went wrong. That's not how someone who's facing the death penalty should be represented.
You have to look at everything Judge Ellison has written. You can't just, these things are important, but so is all of his opinions. And what he's also said, Doctor, is that, if I can, is that these convicted felons, well, their statements don't have credibility. His girlfriend doesn't have credibility. You also have to look at, again, he not only carjacks Cassandra Simmons, when he does, he says, I shot a police officer. I shot a policeman. So is it a circumstantial case? Sure. How many capital murders are there that you actually see on video?
You say he said that to who?
Cassandra Simmons, the woman he carjacked across the street.
Okay, now the first 8 times she was talked to, she didn't say that.
So she...
True?
That is true, but she did tell the local CBS affiliate the day after, the immediate day after, he told me, I shot a police officer.
Yeah, but she's interviewed 8 times, and she says, get out of your car. He said, give me your car. The 9th time, she adds, I shot a cop.
A jury considered this, and they found her to be credible, and they found him guilty.
And wasn't there a witness on the sidewalk watching him take the car who also testified that he said, just give me your car, and did not testify that he said, I shot a cop, give me your car?
I do not recall that.
And this is important. Okay. That witness apparently was not located and certainly not presented at trial, but he overheard the interaction between Rob Will and Cassandra Simmons and just reported to the police that day that he overheard that he told Cassandra to get out of the car. No mention of this later statement that Cassandra Simmons attributes to Rob Will.
When we come back, Sammy claims that Deputy Hill was shot 7 times, all long range. Josh disagrees. We'll talk about why that makes a big difference next.
If the shooter is significantly close to the victim, then that unburnt gunpowder will be embedded into the skin.
So your first conclusion would be that it would be a longer range as opposed to being right up next to them. Rob Will has been sitting on death row for 20 years, but claims he did not pull the trigger. He did not shoot Deputy Hill. Now, we spoke earlier about gunshot residue, and we wanted to learn more. So Jason Flom headed to the gun range to meet up with firearms and ballistic expert Leonard Romero. Take a look.
There are two types of gunshot residue, Jason. There's one that comes out the front of the barrel when the gun is fired. That helps us determine the distance that a shooter was from the target. The second one comes from the primer. When it's discharged, it's expelled from the rear of the firearm.
Where on your body would I be able to find gunshot residue right now?
Maybe on the back of my hand, the webbing in between my fingers, inside of my hand, as well as the clothing that I'm wearing right now.
So, Leonard, if a person has gunshot residue, does that prove they fired the gun?
It doesn't conclusively say that a person fired a gun. It says that a person fired the gun, was in close proximity, or was in an environment where they were exposed to that primer gunshot residue.
So let me flip it the other way. So if a person has no gunshot residue, can you say with certainty that that person did not fire the gun?
No, we can't say with any certainty. Primer gunshot residue can be washed off, wiped off. Because of those issues, we cannot specifically say conclusively that the person did not fire the gun.
So what that means is there's no gunshot residue on a person doesn't necessarily prove that they were not a shooter. Is that really accurate? Because that's an amazing revelation to me.
That's true, Jason.
Well, joining us in the audience is Leonard Romero. So, Leonard, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Phil.
Let me ask you this. Talk about what stippling is on a victim, what you can tell about the distance between the shooter and the victim based on powder burns.
Yes, sir. Stippling is burnt and unburnt gunpowder that's embedded into the skin of a victim. If the shooter is significantly close to the victim, then that burnt, unburnt gunpowder coming from the front part of the weapon, the muzzle part, will be embedded into the skin. But they have to be at a fairly close distance for that to happen.
So if there's no stippling at all on the victim, your first conclusion would be that it would be a longer range as opposed to being right up next to them.
Yes, sir. It would be at a greater distance than it would deposit it, yes.
Okay. And he had a gunshot across his third and fourth knuckle, right?
He did.
Okay. So that gunshot, your theory is he shot himself while he was shooting the deputy.
That's correct.
And your position is one of the shots at the deputy came through and hit his hand.
Correct. If I can interject on that point.
Please.
All right. Again, Rob Will has told multiple different versions of what happened. All right.
If I can interrupt on that,
Yes, you can.
Rob Will has maintained steadfastly his innocence from the beginning. You are nitpicking on a fact here, a fact here.
Well, no, but I'm not nitpicking, Sammy. I'm going based upon what his attorneys testified to in federal court, which is he could not tell a straight story on the... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, his attorneys are testifying regarding information, one, that you should not have. Right?
Well, but if you raise an ineffective assistance claim, it's open. It's open in federal court.
No. That was not the ineffective assistance claim. The discrete ineffective assistance claim was whether or not the trial lawyers were ineffective for not calling certain witnesses.
Right.
That was the claim, and you've exploited that successfully over the years.
Exploit is a little strong, but okay.
And by
we do like one another, by the way.
By looking and reviewing privileged information, and what I'd like to do, since you've gotten access to our files,
sure.
Will you open your files?
Come on,
including all the notes of the interviews of the witnesses that took place, including Deputy Strickland.
Sammy, you've had an open record file.
No. We have not.
You and I have looked at evidence. I've gotten evidence out of the storage room for you. If you want to come into my office on Wednesday and do a file review, come on.
But no attorney work product.
Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to review the attorney work product.
Well, you've reviewed
and do an in-camera review, and sure, I'm happy
they
to
hug
do that.
each other. Coming up, Rob says everything changed for him when he turned 10 years old. We're going to find out why he says that next. What kind of upbringing did you have?
There was a lot of abuse, man, growing up. And it's just bad stuff, you know.
Tomorrow.
He claims he married online
She's a beautiful woman. This is not a scam.
and that his new wife
The word wife usually describes somebody that I've at least met.
has a big inheritance.
10.6 million.
Who married you?
I don't know.
You just signed your name on a piece of paper.
I sent my driver's license, Social Security. They had me investigated.
I'll bet they did.
That's tomorrow. Then on Thursday,
I have OCD and hoarding disorder.
You told my staff I didn't know anything about OCD.
She's very manipulative.
You're not going to manipulate me.
that's Thursday.
Rob Will's advocate, Jason Flom, claims Rob is an innocent man. He says Rob was at the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong people stealing car parts when he was 20 years old. Now, Assistant District Attorney Josh Rees says Rob was no stranger to law enforcement. When I sat down with Rob on death row, I wanted to find out what type of role models he had growing up. Who was this guy? Tell me about your childhood, because here you are with a stolen car, taking the rims off of it. What kind of upbringing did you have?
There was a lot of abuse, man, growing up. And it's just bad stuff, you know. Because of the way I grew up, because of sexual abuse that I suffered as a child, I really hated myself, man. The first time I ever tried to kill myself was when I was 10 years old. That's when substance abuse started.
You said at 10 years old, you tried to take your own life. Did you lose your father when you were 10?
He was murdered.
And he was a heroin addict, right? Think his murder was drug-related?
Probably.
And you don't have an active relationship with your mother?
No.
How'd you do in school?
I did all right in school, but I, missed school a lot. My home life was so just, man, it was really, it's hard for people to understand that never dealt with that. And again, Dr. Phil, understand that I'm barely processing this stuff. I'm 41 years old and I'm barely processing this stuff now. It's real hard to explain to people who didn't experience that, what it's like every day to go home and, be beat down to the ground for no reason.
Jessica, you're an advocate for Rob Will, and you've put a lot of energy into it, spent a lot of time with him. Mm-hmm. What's your impression of him?
He is, it's hard to really explain him until you meet him. I think Jason knows what I mean. But he's just the sweetest. He's funny, he's so intelligent, he's educated himself beyond anything that anyone would ever imagine being in those walls.
And he's evolved even while he's in prison and has become a very accomplished artist, true?
Yeah, Doc. My meeting with him was nothing less than extraordinary. I spent about, almost the full 4 hours that you're allowed as a visitor speaking with him on that, through the glass, as you did, and probably in that same spot. And 3.5 hours into this, I said to him, Rob, I don't understand something. We've covered a lot of ground over the past several hours, and I haven't found one subject, and I consider myself to be relatively intelligent, I haven't found one subject I know as much about as you do. How could that be? We had talked about philosophy, we had talked about law, we talked about art history, we talked about classical music, we talked about philology. I didn't even know what philology was till he explained it to me. And so, he says to me, well, what do I do all day? He says, I sit here in my cell, I listen to NPR, which is where he first heard my name. He says, I read books, because people send me books. He has become a brilliant poet and painter, and he has so much to contribute to society that it's one of the reasons why I've felt so compelled to try to spread the word about this awful case, because this is a guy who could be enriching the lives of many other people. I think that, after I saw him not too long after that, I was at an event for NYU, and I spoke to the dean, and I said, he could teach a course. If he wasn't the smartest kid in your classes, he could teach a course at your university. And I think that he would excel given the chance. Now, is he going to have challenges if he comes out of prison? Of course. But he is a highly intelligent and involved person who doesn't belong where he's at.
He's actually had art shows.
He's had a couple of art shows. He's got a third one coming up. He's a gifted painter.
But you don't get paint in...
No, he actually, as I understand it, he crushes up colored pencils with his hands in the cell. It's a very time-consuming process, and melts it with a hot pot or something that he's got in there in order to make paint. so that he can create these artworks. And it's, it's an amazing process, and I think it speaks to his last name is Will, but it speaks to his will to live and to persevere and to keep fighting. I mean, I don't imagine any of us in his situation would be able to find that sort of extra gear that he has found and transform his misery and his loneliness and frustration into creativity and into accomplishments that are, pretty remarkable.
I'm reading your mind sitting here saying, yeah, I'm sure he plays a hell of a game of golf too, but that doesn't change the fact that he shot a police officer 7 times. Log on to drphil.com and tell me your story. If it's chosen, I might just be able to help. Well, let me see if I can sum this up in terms of what I'm hearing. I'm reading your mind sitting here saying, yeah, I'm sure he plays a hell of a game of golf too, but that doesn't change the fact that he shot a police officer 7 times.
That's right. And there's another, we're, with all due respect, and I respect the work you do in terms of criminal justice reform. I really do. I'm not saying that there are a lot of things that need to be fixed in our criminal justice system, but it's important to focus on the facts of this case. And there's a very real victim in this case. And it is Kathy Hill and her daughters and the grandchildren that have never got to see Barry Hill. And I'm here for them today because, yes, I am absolutely convinced we got our man.
Can I just add one thing?
Well, we got limited time,
okay,
so you get to the point.
So the other thing is we know that we've executed many innocent people in Texas and around the country.
Well, I don't know that. And I think you're overstating that to say we know and we've executed and many. There are problems with our criminal justice system. We have criminalized addiction, okay? No doubt. There are actually innocent people in prison. We have a bail system that discriminates against the poor. And you have been an important voice in dealing with that, and I respect that, all right? But what we need to do is we need to drill down to the facts of this specific case. A man who is found with the murder weapon, who tells somebody, I just shot a police officer, who tries to pour bleach on his clothing, okay?
That's not true.
Well, it is true.
That is not true.
And you can come to the office on Wednesday, and we can look at the file together again. It is true.
And I would say this, if I could just interrupt for a second, we have the ultimate penalty. The state of Texas is prepared to murder this man, and we have a federal judge who said what he said. That's not hyperbole. He said that. If that's not reasonable doubt, nothing is.
But what claims would you have brought? And the claims that he would have brought are the claims that Sammy has brought, that trial counsel was ineffective, and the judge has said and the courts have said, no, they were not. And if you read the whole trials transcript, let me tell you something. David Cunningham and Anthony Osso did an incredible job in that trial. And the jury listened to all the evidence, and they found beyond a reasonable doubt that Robert Gene Will killed Barry Hill, who was a good man, and he did not deserve to die that day.
And Josh, you will agree, though, they could have done an even better job had the state not blocked and suppressed key evidence that was favorable to their defense.
Well, if you're talking about the hit document,
yes,
I absolutely disagree with you, and so did the courts.
Yeah.
And
your position to the courts was that this document was not even favorable to the defense.
We have to take a break. We're going to have final comments when we come back. And one thing we know for sure about this story is a sheriff's deputy was murdered. Deputy Barrett Hill was a father, he was a husband, and Josh will tell us more about him when we come back. Want to know what's coming up on Dr. Phil? Visit our website and subscribe to our newsletter. You'll get weekly updates, life strategies, and exclusive video that you won't find anywhere else. Plus, on drphil.com, you can see sneak previews of upcoming shows. Log on today. Your position is you have no doubt in your mind that you have the right man. You don't have DNA evidence, and you don't have gunshot residue on his hand, and you don't have an eyewitness. But you have him alone in the woods with this police officer, and he gets shot 7 times. He's then caught with the murder weapon and an extra magazine when he hijacks the car and flees the scene. And there's nothing that suggests anyone else was there to commit this crime.
Right.
Your position here is that he did not shoot him. He was shot from a distance, from behind. There's no DNA evidence, there's no blood evidence, there's no GSR whatsoever. And there was a contract put out to have him killed by the only other person that knows what happened.
Correct.
And that was withheld from the trial, so they didn't have the opportunity to know that. And the only reason that he would want him killed is because he's the one that knows he's the shooter. And the jury ought to know that.
And the jury should have known that.
And it was withheld, and that prejudices your client, and you think as a result he deserves a new trial.
Absolutely.
20 years ago, Sheriff's Deputy Barrett Hill went to work. He never came home to his wife, Kathy, and their two daughters, Whitney and Lacey. He was just 38 years old. He's not going to be there to walk his daughters down the aisle. He's not going to be there when they graduate. He's not going to be there for all of those watershed events that they have in their life. That's not okay with me. That's why I say I advocate for Deputy Hill and his family. They may not think so, because they may think I'm trying to get a guilty man that shot Deputy Hill off, and that's not true. The family gave us a statement. His legacy is one of love, laughter, and joy. For that we are grateful, even if we only had him for a short time on this earth, because we see that legacy lived out every day of our lives, and it has made us love deeper, live better, and work harder. Never forgotten, always loved. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.